the first part is the embryo stage of development or its level of expansion, and that's usually given a 1 to 6th grade. So if you have a 1, it means the embryo is at the early blastocyst stage. So that cavity has just started to form, but it takes up less than half of the embryo's volume. A 2 would be a blastocyst, which means that cavity has taken up more than half of the embryo's space. A 3 is a full blastocyst. That means that the cavity takes up 100% of the embryo's space, but the embryo still really hasn't grown in diameter. So it's still roughly the same size it was even when it was an egg, maybe a little bit bigger, but not much. And at this point, you'll see a shell around the embryo. It's called the zona, and it'll still be pretty thick at this point. But then what happens is the embryo actually starts to grow in diameter as the volume increases, and that shell around the embryo starts to thin out. And at this point, it's called a 4, or an expanded blastocyst, and we know that because the shell is very thin, and hopefully at this point you can see the 2 distinct cell lines that I'll talk about in just a second within the embryo. And then a 5 means that there's actually a hole that has been created in that shell, and the embryo begins to hatch from that shell, which is good. We want that to happen because embryos have to hatch in order to implant into the uterine lining. So hatching is a good thing. And then 6 means that it's fully hatched. So it's completely out of its shell. And that would be the most advanced stage of development that we would see inside of the lab. So that's the 1 through 6, and the number, it's again the level of expansion or stage of development. And then there are also 2 letters that usually accompany that. So the first letter refers to the appearance of the inner cell mass. And the inner cell mass is the part of the embryo that will develop into the fetus. And so it normally appears as sort of a round or semi-round grouping of cells within the embryo. We normally start to see it maybe around the 3 stage, definitely by the 4 stage though is when we hope to see it. And we normally grade it on an ABC scale. Some clinics also do a D as well, but every clinic's a little different. But if it has an A grade, that means that it's very compact. It's almost round in appearance, and that's what we would say is above average or textbook perfect. If it's mostly compact, but maybe it's, not a perfect circle, but it's there and it looks good, we would give it a B grade. And if it's sort of scant or not very compact, like it's there, but it's below average in appearance, we would give it a C grade. And then if a clinic does D grades, it usually means it's not there at all or it's degenerate. And then the next letter refers to the appearance of the trophectoderm. So those are the cells that sort of line the shell of the embryo, and they develop into the placenta and the non-fetal tissues. And they are also normally graded on an ABC, sometimes D scale, with A being the best. So if you have an A grade trophectoderm, that means that you have a lot of cells. They're all basically the same size, which means cell division's occurring at a normal rate. There aren't a lot of gaps in between the cells, so it looks really great. We would give that an A grade. A B grade would mean that the cells are there. There might be a couple of gaps. Maybe they're not all completely the same size. That would be a B grade. If there's really not a lot of cells, or there's a lot of gaps, or the cells, they're just not very normal in appearance, it would probably be a C grade. And then, of course, a D would be non-existent or degenerate.